Welcome back to Scholar Opportunity Nexus. And in today's series of videos, we are looking at types of vectors. In that, we are continuing the vectors that we started with. And today, we mainly take parallel vectors. We are taking mainly parallel vectors. So, yes, parallel vectors. So, in our previous video, we explained what a vector is. We explained it very well that a vector is in a physical quantity that is having a magnitude in a specified direction. So this. Let's take this line to be our vector, and then the arrow. The arrow, let's assume it's showing a specified direction. The arrow is showing a specified direction. So this is a vector quantity. This is a vector. So coming back to what we are dealing with for today, that's parallel vectors. For parallel vectors, a vector is said to be in parallel, or two vectors are said to be in parallel when they are not inclined at an angle. In our math or basic math, just as parallel lines that never meet is the same that applies to parallel vectors. Parallel vectors never meet. So let's take this. Let's see, this is vector A and this is vector B. So these two vectors would never meet, and hence they are called parallel vectors. Now when we take these parallel vectors, we split them into two parts, and with those two parts we can have a specific one for each. So the first one, our first branch of parallel vectors, let me just write it here. Parallel vectors. It's splitted into like and unlike vectors. Vectors splitted into this. So we have the like vectors and the unlike vectors. We'll be explaining this more in the next slide. For like parallel vectors, these vectors have the same direction and not necessarily having the same magnitude. So let's write so this is one vector. This time in parallel. Let me clean it. This is one, trying to draw the parallel line. So sorry for that. This might be better. And this is another vector. So they are in parallel and they are like because they are moving in the same direction. They are all having the same direction but not in the same magnitude. So this is a like parallel vector. And for the unlike, let me say PV, parallel vector. So for they are parallel vectors that move in what opposite direction, so they don't have the same direction. So taking this, maybe this is moving like this and this is moving like this. So this is an unlike vector, and for them to, they don't have the same magnitude. Their magnitude are not the same. For like vectors, their magnitudes are not the same, but they have the same direction. But unlike vectors, the magnitudes are not the same, but they have different direction too. So now coming to like vectors. So there are some vectors that would have the same magnitude in the same direction. And in that case, we'll say they are equal parallel vectors or equal vectors. So when two vectors have the same magnitude in the same direction, then it's a type of a like parallel vector. Do you get it? It's a type of a like parallel vector. So all like so yes, so that's equal vectors. So all equal vectors are like vectors, but not all like parallel vectors are equal vectors. Yes, that was just by the way. So from here, I'm doing an arrow of like what you get. So we have the equal vectors, equal parallel vectors. So for these vectors, they would have the same magnitude and direction. So you see it's a type of like parallel vectors, and in this case they're having the same direction and the same magnitude. Coming to so when we come to the unlike, we also have an unlike the parallel vectors that would have the same magnitude but different directions. So in that case, we call them opposite parallel vectors. So let's say opposite vectors. Opposite vectors. In this case, you have the same magnitude, but the difference will just come in their direction. But they are also parallel vectors. So all opposite parallel vectors are unlike parallel vectors, but not all unlike parallel vectors are opposite parallel vectors or opposite vectors. Yes. So that will be it for today. In our next section, we'll be dealing with other types of vectors again for you to understand everything, and then we build on every concept. Thank you for watching.